Okay, so get this. A trade deal just dropped that creates a market of 2 billion people. Yeah, you heard that right. But the real story, the juicy part, isn't just the size of the deal. It's the wild geopolitical mystery behind why it happened now. And, get this, how the United States basically and completely unintentionally played matchmaker. Let's dive in and unpack how this all went down.
I mean, to get a sense of just how big this is, you only need to hear what the EU Commission president called it. 4 simple words: the mother of all deals. That's what she said about this new free trade agreement between the EU and India. And she's not exaggerating. We're talking about a deal that covers nearly a quarter of the entire world's population. It's just massive. But here's what makes this whole thing so shocking. You got to remember one number: 20. For 20 years, the EU and India tried to hammer out this exact deal. And for 2 straight decades, what happened? Nothing. The talks stalled, they went absolutely nowhere, they just completely fell apart, time and time again. So that brings us to the million-dollar question, right? After 20 years of total failure, why now? What on earth changed? Why all of a sudden does this impossible deal get signed? Well, the answer, believe it or not, is thousands of miles away in Washington, D.C.
It all started with a really dramatic and super rapid shift in American foreign policy. Washington launched this aggressive economic pressure campaign, and it sent these massive shockwaves around the world. And those shockwaves? They're what ended up pushing 2 of the planet's biggest economies into a totally unexpected alliance.
And man, things escalated fast. I mean, incredibly fast. In the summer of 2025, it started with some diplomatic tension in June. But then August hit, boom. On August 6th, the U.S. slaps India with a 25% tariff for buying Russian oil. And then, the very next day, they stack another 25% right on top. We're talking a 50% tariff, practically overnight. Just staggering. You can probably guess the impact on the U.S.-India relationship was not good. It was severe. Richard Rossow over at the Center for Strategic and International Studies said it perfectly. He said these moves were depleting the reservoir of trust that both nations have painstakingly built over a generation. Think about that phrasing, a reservoir of trust. It makes you realize this wasn't just about dollars and cents. It was about destroying something that took decades to build. So, with all this intense pressure coming from Washington, what happens? Well, it creates this really powerful shared reason for the EU and India to talk. All of a sudden, both of them had a very, very good reason to start looking around for new partners. This wasn't just an alliance of convenience anymore. It became an alliance of necessity. Look at it from their perspectives. Both Brussels and New Delhi were staring down the exact same problem. The EU, they needed new markets to protect themselves from, this unpredictable American trade policy. And India? Well, India was feeling the burn directly, and they had to find new partners to be less vulnerable. They were basically pushed into each other's arms. And what was the result of that big push? Well, here we are, a brand new free trade zone with a combined market of 2 billion people. Let that number sink in for a second. That's a figure that just fundamentally redraws the map of global trade. It creates an economic powerhouse of absolutely immense scale. And so it all came to a head on January 27th, 2026. That's the day it became official. The largest free trade agreement in the history of India was finally signed. That 20-year stalemate, over. Smashed to pieces by these huge geopolitical shifts that had happened just months before.
Okay, so you might be wondering, how did Washington react to this whole thing? I mean, it was a deal they'd kind of caused, right? Well, their response was complicated. It was this weird mix of total frustration and, at the same time, a pretty blunt admission of who came out on top. Okay, so on one hand, you had some serious criticism. The U.S. Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, he did not mince words. He called the Europeans very disappointing. Basically, he was saying that by signing this deal, the EU picked money and trade over backing the U.S. in its pressure campaign. But then you get this completely different take from the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. He just looked at the deal and said, I think India comes out on top on this, frankly. I mean, that's about as blunt as it gets, right? It's a straight-up admission that, hey, from a pure trade strategy point of view, India just scored a huge win. But hold on, because here's where the plot thickens.
This whole trade drama, it wasn't the only thing happening between the US and India. Not even close. In fact, while all of this was going down, a totally different kind of partnership between them was quietly getting stronger and stronger in the background. It's called the Trust Initiative, and it was launched in early 2025, right in the middle of all this. It's a super high-level partnership focused on all the big stuff for the future: semiconductors, AI, defense tech. So you've got this bizarre, fascinating situation where the US and India are becoming these fierce rivals in trade, but at the exact same time, they're becoming even closer partners on technology and security. Wild, right? So let's zoom out. What does all of this actually mean for the future? Well, this one single deal might be signaling a massive, fundamental shift in the entire global order. And the real-world impact is just staggering. I mean, look at this. Before this deal, if you wanted to sell a European car in India, it faced a 110% tariff. 110. Machinery had duties up to 44%. This new agreement starts tearing down those massive walls, unlocking billions and billions in new trade. It's completely rewiring the global supply chain. And that right there is the crucial point, the big picture. This whole deal is a massive strategic bet from both the EU and India. They're betting that the future isn't about being dependent on one single superpower anymore. They're betting on a more balanced, a more diversified, a more multipolar world. So let's boil it all down. What are the key takeaways here? First, and this is a big one, aggressive trade policies can totally backfire in ways you never see coming. Second, you've got these major powers like the EU and India who are no longer waiting for permission. They're writing their own rules and forging their own alliances. Third, global relationships are getting super complicated, right? You can be fierce competitors one minute and deep partners the next. And finally, the big lesson for everyone seems to be diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one superpower's basket. That's the new name of the game. Look, this deal isn't happening in a vacuum. It's just one huge example of a trend that's happening all over the globe. And as more and more countries start making these kinds of deals to secure their own interests, it leaves us with a really big question to chew on. Is the era of a single dominant superpower finally over?